The name of this chapter is Aunt Trudy's Secret. Ooh, do you like secrets?
Yes.
You like to find out what they're about, though?
Yes.
How about going on a little trip? Grandpa asked one morning. Everyone scurried around to get ready, and in no time they were chugging merrily down the road in Grandpa's little old car. Where are we going? Shouted Dick above the excited chatter. Grandpa laughed. I was wondering who would be the first to ask that question. We are going to go visit your cousins. Before long, the car chugged up a lane of tall shade trees and came to a stop in front of a big white farmhouse. They were the cousins, Kitty and Danny, eagerly waiting for them, and beside them was a large, handsome dog. What is his name? Asked Tommy. Socks, replied Danny, pointing to the dog's white feet. Just like he's wearing socks, giggled the girls. Don't forget the rules, Margie reminded them as they went to the barn to explore and play. Rules? What rules? Danny wanted to know. Oh, about shutting the gate and the gates and such things, Margie replied. They looked at each other, but nobody said a word about the open gate and the little calf. As they played, Socks scampered at their heels, and Danny bragged about how many tricks Socks could do. Prissy is the smartest dog in the world, Dick announced defensively. Socks is just as smart as Prissy. Maybe smarter, snorted Danny. Grandpa said Prissy is the smartest dog he has ever seen. Anyway, Socks is bigger. That doesn't count when a dog is the smartest. By now, all joined in the argument. Their voices got louder and they got angrier, with the boys' fists about to fly, until it seemed there would be a big fight. Suddenly a shadow appeared, and there stood Grandpa. He seemed a big giant looking at them, and they couldn't get away from his eyes. They hung their heads and twisted their fingers. Were those my grandchildren shouting such loud, ugly words at each other? Grandpa spoke slowly, and his voice was sober. The children looked at each other sideways. What was so important that you had to have such a big, noisy quarrel about? Margie finally managed to answer. Well, it started over whose dog was the smartest, and then who was the most important, and then, well, I guess by then everybody was so mad we didn't really know what we were fighting about. I want to tell you something, said Grandpa. Did you know that all the trouble in the whole world started because one person decided he was smarter and more important than anybody else? Wide-eyed, the children listened to Grandpa. Whenever we get to feeling too smart or too important, we're pretty sure to start some trouble. They began to grin at each other. How silly to have a big fight about how smart a dog was. Then they got home that night, and Prissy put her chin on Grandpa's knee and thumped her tail on the floor. Margie thought even Prissy would have been ashamed to hear them fight over such a foolish little thing. Vacation was over all too soon. While they were bustling around packing their things, Grandma brought their job sheets. How would you like to take these souvenirs of your vacation? She asked. What is a souvenir? Asked Tommy. A souvenir is a keepsake, Grandma explained. Something you keep to remind you of something special. And there was Raggle-Taggle. What about me? He seemed to mew. Grandpa had a suggestion. How about letting Raggle-Taggle stay here on the farm? That suited everyone, even Raggle-Taggle, I'm sure. When they arrived home, Mr. Johnson thanked Margie and Dick so very much for giving his children such a wonderful summer. It helped them to forget their sadness over losing their mother. A happy surprise awaited Dick and Margie. A message that Aunt Trudy was coming. Aunt Trudy's coming! Hooray! Dick shouted as he turned cartwheels to express his joy. Aunt Trudy was the jolliest little lady you could ever possibly imagine. Not a dull moment when Aunt Trudy was around. Everyone loved her, children and grown-ups alike. The day Aunt Trudy's smiling face appeared at the door, even the house seemed to welcome her. One sunny morning, they all started for church. As they approached, they saw people standing around outside, talking in sober little groups. How strange, they thought. What's the trouble? What has happened? Mother and Daddy asked a group of their friends. Oh, haven't you heard? Our preacher was in a terrible accident. He was hurt so badly that he died. How did it happen? Daddy asked. A drunken driver ran into his car. Was the drunken man killed too? No, he wasn't hurt at all. What about Linda? Margie asked. Linda, the preacher's daughter, was Margie's best friend. Poor Linda, said one of the women. She is in the hospital and the doctor says it may be that she can never walk again. When she heard that, Margie's heart felt like a stone. On the way home from church, everyone felt too sad to talk much. Finally, Margie asked, why would God let the preacher get killed when he was such a good man? Yes, Dick joined in. Why didn't God let that bad drunk man get killed instead? Hush, Dick, said Mother. We mustn't wish for anyone to be killed. Then Daddy spoke. The way things are in this world, trouble comes to everyone in one way or another. All people have to die, both good and bad. We don't know why God lets this happen this way or that way. He does not explain it to us here in this life. In this case, maybe God saw the preacher was ready to die, but the drunk man was not ready to die. If the drunk man had a chance to live a little longer, maybe he would be sorry for what he had done, so sorry that he would turn to God. That way, the preacher's death could be the means of helping him. God wants everyone to be ready for a home in heaven, and sometimes trouble reminds people to serve God. For Christians, trouble may be a test to see if they will be true to God no matter what happens. Margie's heart was full of grief. All afternoon she was thinking of poor Linda. She tried to imagine what it would be like if she could never walk again. Aunt Trudy tried to comfort her. But you can't understand, Aunt Trudy, Margie wailed. You are always happy and never have any trouble to make you feel bad. At this, Mother and Aunt Trudy quickly looked at each other. Mother got up and motioned for Aunt Trudy to follow her. They went into Mother's room and stayed for quite a while. When they came out, their eyes were red as if they'd been crying a bit. Margie was so surprised. She didn't think jolly Aunt Trudy even knew how to cry. Margie, said Mother, would you go to your room with Aunt Trudy? I've asked her if she would be willing to tell you a certain story. Margie got up slowly and went to her room. What was this all about, anyway? She looked at Aunt Trudy. She had never before seen Aunt Trudy's face look like that. Her face was trying to smile, but was having a hard time of it. Margie, dear, your mother tells me that you have had a lot of trouble lately. Your little friends have lost their mother, and now Linda's daddy had this terrible accident. And poor Linda has to suffer so long. And you think I can't understand because I'm happy all the time. Aunt Trudy sat quietly a few moments. Then she leaned over and kissed Margie and patted her head. She said very softly, I once had a little girl like you. Margie was so surprised that she stared at Aunt Trudy. And I once had a little boy, too. But what happened, Aunt Trudy? Margie almost whispered it. Did they die? Aunt Trudy nodded. Yes, Margie, my two dear little children and their daddy, and I was left all alone. Margie couldn't think of a thing to say, and Aunt Trudy went on. At first I thought God wasn't fair to let that happen to me. After a while I realized that because I had trouble, I could understand other people's troubles and help them. So God helps me to be happy and to help others be happy. You see, Margie dear, a long, long time ago, there was someone who became selfish and got to thinking he was more important than anyone else and made trouble everywhere. Why, that was just what Grandpa said, Margie interrupted. He said it was a long story and we had to come home before he had a chance to tell it to us. Yes, it is a long story, agreed Aunt Trudy. Maybe I can tell it to you before I have to go away. Oh, I hope so, Margie said eagerly. And listen, Margie, I have let you in on a secret that I will keep buried very deep in the bottom of my heart. Will you keep it a secret too? Yes, Aunt Trudy, I promise. And now we can smile again and make people happy. Aunt Trudy was smiling her beautiful smile once more. Margie threw her arms around her. Oh, Aunt Trudy, I love you more than ever. Do you really, truly understand? Or you do really understand, she said.